Hey, Simon from Wolfmix here, and in this video we're going to be looking at what's new in firmware version 2.0. Let's go. Okay, so we're going to get started on the new menu screen that we have over here. As you can see, we have a completely new UI, some new designs, some new icons, and we've got a new menu, which is hopefully a little quicker to use. So we'll start over here at the fixtures, and let's dive right in and add some new fixtures. So we all know how this works. This is the same workflow as before. You choose your fixtures from here. So I've got a demo project running, and I'm going to add 8 moving heads like so, and I'll put these into group A, and then I'm going to add another 6 moving heads, which I'll put in group B, and then finally I'm going to add some LED bars to this project. So I'm going to add 7 of these, and I'm going to put these over in group C, and we should see this light up in the 3D over here. We need to change some of these addresses, so I'm going to put these LEDs onto address 1 of Universe 2. We have the deselect button here, and then moving heads number 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14, I'm going to address from 200, I believe it is. Yep, there they go. And we'll just quickly set some fixture limits here. For those of you that haven't used this screen before, this is great if you've got moving lights to be able to set your boundaries and make sure everything matches up. So with these ones, I'm going to set a min pan of 25%, a max pan of 75%, and then I'm going to reduce the maximum tilt down to 50% like so. And I can move them around here just to test them. That's all good. And then I'll select my first 8 moving heads. And with these, I need a max tilt of 50%. And again, I'm going to limit my pan to 25% and 75%. Something else I want to do with this is to invert the pan, and I can do that with this button up in the top right here. So we'll just spin those left to right. Just test these out like so. Up and down. Okay, in fact for these we actually want max tilt at 100 and min tilt at 50%. There we go. Okay, so once I've got everything patched, I press this new Go button, and this brings us over to the first new screen. This is the intelligent preset screen, and this allows us to generate a bunch of presets automatically. I can select my start page down here, so I'll just have page 1, and I'll tap generate presets, and look at that. Straight away we have a whole bunch of presets just generated automatically. I didn't have to program any of these. It's a really nice starting point for a new project. So on the first page here, we have a bunch of presets. Disco Rainbow, Wolf Rider. This uses one of our new effects, which pings the lights from left to right in a Knight Rider kind of style. Milky Way, some of these are taken from the original demo project, similar kind of effects. Okay, so now I'm going to move to page 2, and you'll notice these buttons have turned blue. Like before, we can change the button colour of the preset, but here's a special thing. Watch this. If I press, let's say, Tropical Juice, the colours of the lights change, but they continue playing the same move and beam effects. And that's the first new feature that I want to show you on the preset screen. If I shift and hit a button, we have colour, move and beam. And what we can do, we can select which elements of the controller we want to store in this preset. So in Tropical Juice, we're just storing colour effects, so it will carry on doing what it's doing and just change the colour. If I go Autumn Forest, I've now got these autumnal colours. Golden Sunshine, golden colours. Disco, variety of disco colours. If we move to page 3, this gives us a load of move effects. So if I press split the atom, or let's do one, yeah, there we go. So you see the move effects changed, but the beam and the colour effects are still doing the same thing. Panplastique, the lights are going left to right, but again, the colours and the beams are the same. Lights to the siren, I quite like this one. Okay, let's go over to page 4. This gives us a variety of beam effects. So we could play this in a slow sparkle. We could do a pulse effect, having the lights pulsing together. Over here we've got scatter. This is one of my favourites of the new effects. Plays this scattering beam effect. We've got sizzle over here. A little bit of a sizzle effect, or your classic fast sparkle. Or if I want the beam effects to stop, I can just press stop and it will continue with the colour and the move effects. You'll probably notice also that we've now got 10 pages of presets. So you've got plenty of space to store hundreds of presets now. Let's go over to the home screen. The home screen's mostly the same. We've got a new place to set the names of groups, so I can tap a group straight away here. I can call this top heads. So I don't need to go into a new screen anymore. Group B will have bottom, and Group C, these are for our LED bars. I've got some interesting new features to show you later with these LED bars. Okay, so everything still works the same here. You've got your flash effects, you've got your solo effects. What you could do now though, you can press Shift and then this will strobe the selected group. So it's really cool for busking because you can kind of solo, flash and strobe directly from the home screen. Let's move on. If we go over to the colour effects. Now this is the same as before. You see we can set a colour effect like this. We could have a nice rainbow effect. But we've got a new button in the top right. We've got 1 and 2. So if I press 2, this now allows me to set a second colour effect. So imagine we wanted a sparkle effect in green and lime. And let's say we wanted that on Group C. So now, if you have a look in the 3D, you've got the first colour effect playing on the moving heads, and you've got the second colour effect playing on the LED bars. And if we go back to the home screen, you might be able to just about see on the camera here that we use a lighter colour for the second effects. So if I hit it again, I can turn it off and on. Or if I shift and hit it, I can toggle between colour effect 1 and colour effect 2. So I could have everything playing on colour effect 2, or I could quickly switch everything over to colour effect 1. 2 colour effects, one of our most requested features. Let's go over to the move effects. We can do the same here. So let's say we wanted Group A playing a panning effect. There they are moving up and down. I'll slow this down a little bit. Now let's say we wanted those moving heads on the floor to be doing like a panning effect. So I'm going to go to number 2. I'm going to select pan and I'm going to select Group B. So you see now the heads on the top are going up and down and the heads on the bottom are going left and right. And we've got that deep green for effects 1 and we've got this pale green for effects 2. They're the double effects. I'm just going to shut these effects off so we can see what we're doing. I'm just going to jump over to position now, just so we can get these lights out of our eyes. There we go. Never good programming with lights in your eyes. Center point. Okay, there we go. So I'm actually going to edit this effect here, this floor position. So we shift and click to edit, just like before. We can move with the touchscreen or with the encoders. But we've got a new function here called cross. If I turn this, the lights cross together, like what you often see at the beginning of a concert if you arrive early at the venue for the support act. We can also fan these as well, so we can mix together the fanning and the cross to make some really interesting effects very quickly. Now another requested feature we've often had is to be able to take one light and position it independently from the other lights within the group. This is possible with this new button up here. If I tap this, I can now select a single light. So I can select, let's say, moving head 1, and I can provide a pan offset. And as you see here, the moving head in the top left is panning. I can then go in and select, let's say, moving head 8, and maybe I want another pan offset on here, and I can adjust the pan of this moving head. And as you see, we've got 2 white dots here. In fact, the dot's green and then it's white when you're editing it, and this shows us which beam we're editing. I'm going to save that. So now we have a new position with custom positions for individual fixtures. Now you might remember before we had 2 banks. Bank 1 had positions 1 to 5, and then we would tap the encoder for bank 2. That would give us a further 5 positions. Well, this works slightly differently in Firmware 2.0. If I tap this encoder, we can now see up to 20 positions all at once on the same screen in Group A. Tapping the encoder again goes back to the full mode, where I can press Shift and I can turn the encoder to toggle between the various banks or pages. We can also use these buttons in the top right here to toggle the pages of all the groups. This is especially useful on colour, so let's jump over to the colour screen. Before, we could only see 5 colours in a group at a time. Now if I tap this button, I can see 20 colours all at once. So I can jump straight to lemon on Group A. And then on Group B, I could jump straight to Pink Panther. We all love a bit of lemon and Pink Panther, right? Now let's go to C with the LED bars. We could put a little bit of mint in there. Okay, that's a little bit too garish. Let's try maybe a little bit of yellow or some lemon again. Yeah, it was a bit too baby colours there, I think. There we go, I'm happy with that. So whilst we're on the colour screen, we've got some new features for the colours as well. So I'm going to shift and click this lemon colour to edit it. Now you can probably tell this screen has changed a little bit. We've got more colour mixing options in the top right. So the first colour mixing option is like before. We can change the colour like this, and we can dial the colour in manually in percentage. We could add a little bit of white as well. We have this new tab called RGB+. If I tap RGB+, I can now see all my colours from 0 to 255, giving finer control of the colour. And again, tapping on the colour screen will change the red, the green and the blue. You can also dial in the white here. I can tap here, dial in a little bit of amber. And yes, finally, for those people with lime in their colour mixing, we can now manually dial in a lime colour. Or if you've got those ultraviolet bars to make your teeth shine purple, white, then you can dial in your ultraviolet over here. We also have CMY control. This allows us to edit the cyan, magenta and yellow for those of you with moving heads with colour filters. Now this is the interesting screen. This one's called hue. Now what this allows you to do is to obviously change the hue of the light. So you see you can adjust the hue finely like this, and you can adjust the saturation. Now the special thing about this screen is it can automatically set the white, the amber and the lime. So if I turn this to 100%, as I move the colour point towards lime, which is around about here, it's going to automatically mix in that lime without me having to dial it in manually. It will do it with white as the saturation increases, and as I move towards the reddish amber shades, it will also dial in some amber. Now sometimes with these special colours you actually want to remove the RGB and just have the amber or the lime. So with this you can take the RGB off completely and you can use those solid white, amber and lime values. Or perhaps you want to have a little mix of both of them, so you could set both 50-50. This would allow you to have like the RGB colour mixing, making up half the colour, and then the white, amber and lime mixing to make up the other half of the colour. Now this often changes depending on which kind of light you're using. So some lights might be RGB amber, and they use amber to express a white colour. Other fixtures might have RGB amber and white, Now those fixtures use white for setting a white colour, but then they use amber just to warm it up a little. So there's not really a standard for mixing these colours. So what I advise is you basically go into here, you use this, you set this at maybe like 50-50 or 60-60, and you move this around until the colours are doing something similar to what you want, and then you can go back to the RGB plus and you can dial in a little bit extra lime, or you could remove a little bit of extra amber to your colour, and then remember to save it. You just have to click the flashing button and then that's saved in all your presets. Finally, we've got the grid. You know how the grid works. You can select one of the 20 colours and it will show you the corresponding values at the bottom. So that's a new colour screen. Again with the colours, hit here for your 20 colours. Over to gobos. Again, if I hit A, I have 20 gobos in the moving head. If I go B, I have 20 gobos in group B. This is great, by the way, if you've got lasers, because you can load your laser patterns. So you can load your favorite 20 laser patterns, and you've got one hit access to those laser patterns without having to jump between different pages. You can see everything at once. Over to the live edits, nothing much has changed here apart from the UI, except we've now got 4 pages, which gives you the possibility to create up to 80 live edits. Great for all those little custom effects and things that you want to set. Moving on, over to the beam effects. So I'm actually going to turn off these moving heads and just leave you with these LED bars. Okay, so in the past we would trigger a beam effect, right? Those of you that have bars that stand up, pixel bars, you might want to create something like this. Maybe you want to create a chaser. Now the problem is, it's kind of happening 1 pixel at a time, right? So if we want something that's symmetrical outwards, I mean, it looks super cool, don't get me wrong, I love it, and you can synchronize it to the BPM as well, 1, 2, 3, 4. But sometimes you want to have like effects that happen on each individual bar, and that's where this new link button comes in the top right. If I tap this button a couple of times, so if I go link group and then link fixture, what we have now are the fixtures playing the same thing. So you see the effect is linked on each fixture, and this gives you loads of new possibilities. So this is the chaser effect, or how about the new Wolf Rider effect? So it's pinging from left to right. I'm going to click the link button again, and now we have the Wolf Rider jumping up and down. And you can still use things like phasing. I mean, look at that. This is like a VU meter effect, pinging up and down. I can remove the fade from this. So you can create all sorts of interesting effects with this new link feature. That's pretty much everything on these screens and on these screens. If I go back to the home screen, there's a couple of new final features I'm going to show you. If I tap the BPM here, this will show you the BPM, and check this out, we can now manually change the BPM. This was a really requested feature, a feature that was requested quite often. If I hold shift, by the way, you can change the decimal as well. So you know, sometimes you want to tap a BPM, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you might look on your mixer or your DJ software and realize the BPM is actually set to 21, not 120.72. So I can just flick this up to 121, and there you go, perfect sync. Now sometimes do you find that your music's in sync, but it's a little bit out of phase? You know, it might be just behind the beat or just in front of the beat. And this new feature called phase jog allows you to just kind of jog the effect a little bit forward or a little bit backward in the same way as you would with a music track, you know, with a turntable. If you want to speed it up a bit, you just give it a little jog. And you can do the same now with this. If you're using like Ableton Link or OS2L or MIDI clock, you can also provide an offset with this as well to compensate for any processing delays. Another feature we've got here is music break. If I turn this on, the effects will actually start and stop with the music if they're synced with the BPM. So imagine you've got a colour change and it's changing to the beat of the music, but then the music stops and you want the colours to freeze. Well, when this is enabled, your effects will freeze as soon as that music stops for about half a second. And then when the music starts again, your effects will continue from where they left off. So that's a music break option. Just a couple of final things in the menu here. We've got the new project screen. Before you could store up to 6 projects. Now you can store up to 100 projects or 3.5 megabytes, whichever you use first. And we've optimized the project format so they take about 15 times less space than they used to. And you'll notice that when you're creating new projects and opening projects, everything works a lot faster now than it did before. We have a new screen here called Mappings. This screen allows you to do all your MIDI and DMX mappings from one place. So you've got your group dimmers like before, with your MIDI and DMX over here. You've got your presets, so you can do your MIDI mappings to your presets. By the way, some people didn't know that if you set a mapping, you can actually also set an out value over here. If you've got something like an APC MIDI, an APC Mini MIDI controller, the out value will actually change the color of the button. So that's definitely worth playing about with if you haven't already. Then we've got preset page. So now we've got 10 pages. It's useful to have on a MIDI controller the possibility to change the pages quickly. So you can map those over here. And then a feature we have had requested a lot on the forums is to be able to MIDI map these flash buttons. So you can now set your flash button MIDI mapping over here. BPM tap. Great if you're playing in a band. We've had a few people send in some photos using DMX and MIDI foot pedals. You know, imagine you're in a band, you're playing bass, you might have a bit of spare time. Not that the bass players ever have more spare time than the guitarist, but if they were to have some spare time, they can hit the strobe, they can hit the Wolfmix, or they can even tap a BPM using the MIDI foot pedal to keep everything in sync. We have a new settings screen here. We've now split the settings into separate sections. One thing you might want to know about, if you used to exclude these from certain groups, you can now do this from the settings screen. So if I wanted to exclude the Wolf from group C, for example, I can just hit C like so. Maybe I want to exclude it from group D as well. I can do this. So just a simple little feature there. And this is over in the new settings screen. Your lock buttons are up here now, similar place to before. So that is a quick crash course in Firmware 2.0. I hope you all enjoy using it. Any questions, hit us up on our forums, on our Facebook, on our Instagram, usual places. And I'll see you in the next video.